The massive crystalline doors of the Bloodline Hall towered before Elena Martinez, their surface pulsing with ancient energy that had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. The keepers of the hall, tall beings with silver skin and eyes like distant stars, regarded her with barely concealed disgust. Their leader, Archkeeper Vexthul, consulted the genetic scanner with mechanical precision. Human designation Elena Martinez. His voice carried the weight of cosmic authority. Your DNA shows no trace of the noble houses, no connection to the founding bloodlines of this sector. Your presence here is an insult to our sacred traditions. Elena stood her ground despite the crushing weight of their disapproval. Around her, other supplicants waited their turn, beings from dozens of species whose genetic heritage traced back to the original colonizers of this galaxy arm. Each carried within their cells the markers of greatness, the proof of their ancestors' legendary deeds. Each had earned their right to enter the hall through birthright alone. I'm not here because of my bloodline, Elena said quietly. I'm here because the Guardian called to me in my dreams. Every night for 3 months I've seen the same vision, a voice speaking my name, telling me to come to this place. The assembled crowd murmured with shock. No one had claimed direct contact with the Guardian in over 5 centuries. The last person to make such a claim had been immediately granted entry to the hall's inner sanctum, where they had emerged as one of the most powerful leaders in galactic history. Vexthul's expression hardened. Impossible. The Guardian speaks only to those whose blood carries the weight of destiny. Humans are newcomers, barely evolved beyond their primitive origins. Your species has been spacefaring for less than 200 years. The noble houses have guided civilization for millennia. Elena felt the familiar fire building in her chest, the same determination that had driven her to steal a ship and travel across 3 star systems to reach this place. Then test me. If I'm lying, the Guardian will be silent, but if I'm telling the truth, you'll know it. The Archkeeper's laugh was cold as vacuum. Very well, human. We will demonstrate the futility of your claim. He gestured toward the scanning chamber. Place your hand on the genetic reader. When it confirms your common heritage, perhaps you will understand your place in the cosmic order. Elena approached the scanner, a device that looked like it had been carved from a single massive diamond. As her palm touched its surface, the crystal began to glow with soft blue light. Numbers and symbols flashed across its surface, mapping her genetic code with impossible precision. The crowd watched in fascination as her entire biological history was laid bare for examination. The scanner worked for longer than usual, its light growing brighter and more intense. Finally, it emitted a sharp tone of completion. Vexthul approached to read the results, confident in what he would find. His expression of smug superiority slowly transformed into confusion, then shock, then something approaching fear. This cannot be correct, he whispered. Run the scan again. What does it say? Elena demanded. But even as she spoke, she could feel something stirring deep within the hall. A presence vast and ancient was beginning to take notice of the commotion at its gates. The very air seemed to thicken with anticipation. Vexthul's hands trembled as he initiated a second scan. The results came back identical to the first. Your genetic markers, he said, his voice barely audible. They're older than any noble house, older than our records. According to this scanner, your bloodline predates the founding of galactic civilization itself. A ripple of shock passed through the waiting crowd. Several of the noble house representatives stepped forward to examine the readout for themselves. Their faces reflected the same disbelief and growing concern that marked Vexthul's features. There must be an error in the machine, one of them declared. Humans are primitives. Everyone knows this. Their homeworld was discovered only recently, still mired in wars and pollution. They have no great achievements, no ancient wisdom, no legendary heroes worthy of remembrance. But even as the protests began, the Guardian itself was stirring. Deep within the hall, mechanisms that had slumbered for centuries began to activate. The Guardian had indeed been calling to Elena just as she had claimed. And now, with her presence confirmed at the hall's entrance, it was preparing to reveal truths that would shake the foundation of everything the galactic community believed about humanity's place in the universe. Elena smiled as she felt the ancient presence focusing its attention on her. She had always known she was different, had always felt the call of something greater than the small human colony where she had been born. Now, standing before the most prestigious institution in known space, she was finally going to learn why. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate with a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from the very core of the station. Ancient lights that had remained dormant for generations suddenly blazed to life along the walls of the Bloodline Hall. The assembled crowd of noble house representatives stepped back in alarm as the crystalline doors, which had remained sealed during the scanning process, began to slowly swing open. Impossible. Archkeeper Vexthal breathed. The Guardian has never responded to an unverified claimant. Never in the entire history of the hall. Elena felt a pull from beyond the doors as if invisible hands were gently guiding her forward. The sensation was warm and welcoming, like coming home after a long journey through hostile territory. She took a step toward the entrance, then another. With each movement, the lights grew brighter and the humming grew stronger. "Stop her," commanded Lady Zarabeth of House Crimson Star, one of the most powerful bloodlines in the sector. "This is clearly some form of human trickery. Perhaps they have developed technology to interfere with our sacred systems." But as several guards moved to intercept Elena, the Guardian's voice echoed through the hall with such force that every being present was frozen in place. The voice was ancient beyond measure, carrying within it the wisdom of eons and the weight of cosmic truth. "Let the daughter of the forgotten line pass," the Guardian spoke, its words reverberating through flesh and bone and spirit. "She carries within her the blood of those who came before, those who seeded the stars with life and hope when the galaxy was young and full of promise." Elena walked through the massive doorway into the inner sanctum of the hall. Behind her, she could hear angry protests and demands for explanation, but they seemed distant and unimportant now. The Guardian's presence filled her awareness, vast and comforting and impossibly wise. The inner chamber was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The walls were covered in moving murals that showed the history of galactic civilization, but not the version taught in schools and universities. This was the true history, the story of how life had spread from a single blue world to fill the void between stars. "You see now," the Guardian said, its voice speaking directly into her mind. "You understand what your people truly are." Elena watched in amazement as the murals showed her species' real story. Humans had not been primitive newcomers to the galactic community. They had been the first, the original seeders of life, the ancient race that had traveled between stars when the galaxy was young. They had guided the development of dozens of species, teaching them the secrets of technology and civilization, before mysteriously disappearing from galactic history. "What happened to them?" Elena asked. "Why don't we remember?" "Your ancestors grew tired of guiding others," the Guardian explained. "They chose to return to their homeworld and live simple lives, forgetting their cosmic heritage in favor of basic existence. Over generations, the knowledge was lost. Your people convinced themselves they were primitive and young, while the species they had once guided claimed the achievements of their teachers as their own." The murals showed the noble houses in their early days, struggling with basic concepts that human teachers had patiently explained to them. The great technologies that they claimed as their ancestral innovations had actually been gifts from humanity, freely given in the spirit of cosmic brotherhood. "But why reveal this now?" Elena asked. "Why call me here?" The Guardian's presence shifted, taking on a note of urgency. "Because the galaxy faces a threat unlike any it has known. The Devourers are coming, beings from beyond our reality who consume entire civilizations. The noble houses, despite their pride and power, lack the ancient knowledge necessary to stand against them." Elena felt a chill of fear and excitement. "And humans have this knowledge?" "Not consciously," the Guardian admitted. "But it lies dormant in your genetic code waiting to be awakened. You are the key, Elena Martinez. Through you, humanity will remember what it once was and reclaim its place as the galaxy's true guardians." Outside the chamber, the sounds of argument continued to grow. The noble house representatives were demanding answers, threatening to bring their fleets to bear against the station if their questions were not satisfied. But Elena barely heard them. She was too busy absorbing the incredible truth of her heritage and the enormous responsibility that came with it. The Guardian began to download information directly into her mind. Ancient star charts and forgotten technologies, battle strategies used against cosmic threats and diplomatic protocols for species that had been extinct for millennia. The knowledge burned through her consciousness like fire, transforming her from a simple human colonist into something far greater. "You will face doubt and disbelief," The Guardian warned her. Even among your own people, many will refuse to accept this truth. But you must persevere. The survival of all life in the galaxy depends on humanity remembering its true nature. Elena nodded, feeling the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. She was no longer just Elena Martinez. She was the inheritor of humanity's greatest legacy and the herald of its return to cosmic significance. When Elena finally emerged from the Guardian's chamber, the atmosphere in the outer hall had changed dramatically. Word of the Guardian's acknowledgement had spread throughout the station, and representatives from dozens of species had arrived to witness this unprecedented event. News feeds across the galaxy were buzzing with reports of a human being accepted into the most exclusive institution in known space, Archkeeper. Vexthul approached her with a mixture of reverence and barely concealed resentment. The Guardian has spoken, he said through gritted teeth. We must honor its judgment regardless of our personal feelings about your species. Elena could see the conflict in his silver eyes. Everything he had believed about galactic history and racial superiority had been challenged in a single moment. The other noble house representatives watched her with similar expressions of confusion and growing hostility. This changes nothing, declared Lord Commander Throckval of House Iron Thunder, his massive frame towering over Elena despite her above-average height. One human being recognized by an ancient computer does not elevate your entire species. You are still newcomers, still primitives who stumbled into space travel through luck rather than wisdom. Elena felt the ancient knowledge stirring within her mind, battle tactics and leadership strategies that had once commanded respect from the very beings who now sought to diminish her. The Guardian is not merely a computer, she replied calmly, and what it revealed to me will become clear to everyone soon enough. As if summoned by her words, alerts began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts flooded the communication systems as deep space monitoring stations detected massive gravitational anomalies at the edge of the galaxy. Ships were appearing from the void between galaxies, vessels of impossible size and alien design that radiated malevolent energy. The Devourers had arrived ahead of schedule. Admiral Kestrel, Vorn of the Galactic Defense Fleet, materialized as a hologram in the center of the hall. His blue-scaled face was grim with the weight of terrible news. All sector commanders are ordered to emergency status. We have confirmed first contact with an extragalactic threat. Initial reports suggest hostile intent and capabilities far beyond our current understanding. Elena stepped forward, the Guardian's knowledge filling her with certainty about what needed to be done. Admiral, I request permission to address the Defense Fleet command structure. Vorn's eyes widened in surprise. You're the human that caused all this commotion at the Bloodline Hall. What could you possibly contribute to our military planning? Before Elena could answer, another wave of alarms filled the air. A massive Devourer ship had entered the outer system, its mere presence causing nearby asteroids to dissolve into component atoms. The energy readings were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Because I know how to fight them, Elena said simply. The knowledge is in my genetic memory, passed down from the last time they threatened our galaxy. Humanity faced the Devourers before, tens of thousands of years ago. We defeated them then, and we can do it again. The assembled representatives erupted in scornful laughter. Preposterous, sneered Lady Zarabeth. If humans had fought such a battle, it would be recorded in our histories. The noble houses maintain complete records of all significant galactic events. Elena smiled grimly. Your histories begin with the founding of your civilizations. But humanity was already ancient when your species were still learning to use tools. We taught you, guided you, and protected you. Then we chose to step back and let you find your own way. But the knowledge of that protection remained, sleeping in our genetic code until it was needed again. On the holographic displays, the Devourer vessel began extending tendrils of dark energy toward the nearest inhabited world. The planet's defensive shields, technology considered state-of-the-art by galactic standards, lasted less than 30 seconds before failing completely. The world began to dim as its life force was systematically consumed. Admiral Vorn watched in horror as millions of lives were extinguished in moments. Our weapons had no effect, he reported. The energy signatures are completely incompatible with our technology. It's as if they exist in a different layer of reality. They do, Elena confirmed. The Devourers feed on dimensional energy, drawing power from multiple layers of existence simultaneously. Standard weapons can't touch them because they're not entirely present in our reality. She closed her eyes and accessed the ancient knowledge the Guardian had given her. Star charts appeared in her mind, showing the locations of hidden weapons caches and forgotten battleships left behind by humanity's previous incarnation. Manufacturing processes for technologies that could wound beings who existed between dimensions. Tactical formations designed specifically to contain and destroy entities like the Devourers. There are weapons, she announced. Ancient human weapons hidden throughout the galaxy and left dormant until they were needed. But they can only be activated by someone carrying the proper genetic markers. Throckval laughed harshly. Even if we believed this fantasy, one human could not possibly activate enough weapons to make a difference against a fleet of those monsters. Elena's smile grew wider as she felt the full scope of the Guardian's gift becoming clear. You're right. One human couldn't do it alone. But I'm not alone. Every human in the galaxy carries those same genetic markers. Every single one of my species is a potential key to unlock humanity's greatest weapons. The revelation hit the assembly like a physical blow. If Elena was correct, then the species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers was actually their only hope for survival. The irony was almost too bitter to comprehend. Admiral Vorn's military training kicked in, overriding his personal prejudices. What do you need? He asked Elena directly. Transport to the nearest human colony, she replied, and a way to communicate with every human settlement in the galaxy simultaneously. It's time for my people to remember what we really are. The fastest ship in the Galactic Defense Fleet, a sleek courier vessel designed for emergency diplomatic missions, carried Elena toward New Terra colony at maximum speed. Behind them, the Devourer fleet continued its systematic advance through the outer systems, consuming entire worlds with terrifying efficiency. Each planet that fell sent shockwaves through the galactic communication networks as billions of lives were snuffed out in moments. Elena sat in the ship's communication center, surrounded by the most advanced broadcasting equipment in known space. Admiral Vorn had granted her access to every military and civilian communication channel, allowing her to reach every human settlement simultaneously. The message she was about to send would change everything for her species. Are you certain about this? Asked Captain Jen Nakamura, the ship's commander and one of the few humans serving in the upper ranks of the defense fleet. If you're wrong about our genetic heritage, this broadcast will make our entire species look like delusional fanatics. Elena felt the ancient knowledge pulsing in her mind, star maps and weapon specifications that were older than most civilizations. I'm not wrong, she replied. The Guardian doesn't lie, and the evidence is already starting to surface. Long-range scanners are detecting energy signatures near human colonies that match no known technology. Our forgotten weapons are responding to the Devourer threat. She activated the communication system and felt the weight of her species' future settling on her shoulders. Across the galaxy, millions of humans would hear her words. In mining colonies on distant asteroids, in research stations orbiting gas giants, in the sprawling cities of New Earth, and the farming settlements of Kepler's Garden, every human would learn the truth about their heritage. People of humanity, Elena began, her voice carrying across space to reach every human ear. My name is Elena Martinez, and I speak to you from the bridge of a defense fleet vessel as our galaxy faces its greatest threat. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I ask you to listen with open minds and hearts. She paused, feeling the attention of millions focusing on her words. We are not who we think we are. Humanity is not a young species that stumbled into space travel through luck and determination. We are the inheritors of the galaxy's greatest legacy, the descendants of an ancient race that seeded life among the stars when the universe was young. The communication channels exploded with responses as humans across the galaxy reacted with shock, disbelief, and growing curiosity. Elena continued despite the chaos of voices demanding explanations. The beings you know as the noble houses were once our students, she revealed. The technologies they claim as their ancestral achievements were gifts from our ancestors. The great civilizations that look down on us as primitives exist only because humanity taught them how to reach for the stars. On New Terra colony, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her archaeological laboratory, surrounded by artifacts that suddenly made sense in a completely new way. The strange energy readings she had been detecting from ancient ruins, The inexplicable technology fragments that predated any known civilization, the genetic anomalies in the local ecosystem that suggested artificial seeding, everything clicked into place with startling clarity. Similar revelations were occurring across human space as Elena's words awakened genetic memories that had been dormant for millennia. In the mining colonies of the asteroid belt, workers reported strange dreams of vast starships and cosmic battles. On the farming worlds, colonists spoke of sudden understanding about soil composition and crop genetics that seemed to come from nowhere. "The Devourers have returned," Elena announced, her voice cutting through the growing excitement. "They are beings from beyond our reality who feed on dimensional energy. They consumed civilizations before, and they have come to do so again. The galaxy's current defenses cannot stop them." Fear began to replace wonder as humans realized the scope of the threat. Reports from the outer systems painted a terrifying picture of unstoppable monsters that could drain the life from entire worlds in minutes. "But we can stop them," Elena continued, feeling the ancient knowledge crystallizing into clear purpose. "Our ancestors left weapons hidden throughout the galaxy, technology specifically designed to fight the Devourers. These weapons can only be activated by those carrying the genetic markers of humanity. Every single one of us is a key to unlock our species' greatest achievements." Captain Nakamura's console lit up with incoming reports from across human space. "Elena, you need to see this," she said urgently. "Energy signatures are spiking near every major human settlement. Something is powering up." On the main display, they watched as massive structures began to emerge from the surfaces of worlds throughout human space. Ancient shipyards that had been buried beneath millennia of sediment suddenly burst through the ground, their crystalline hulls gleaming with power that had been dormant for tens of thousands of years. Weapon platforms that had been disguised as natural formations shed their camouflage and reached toward the stars with obvious hostile intent. "The awakening has begun," Elena whispered, watching in awe as humanity's true heritage revealed itself. "Our ancestors prepared for this day. They knew the Devourers would return eventually, and they made sure we would be ready. But even as the ancient weapons came online, the Devourer fleet continued its advance. Their scouts had detected the surge of activity in human space and were accelerating their approach. The final confrontation between humanity and the beings that had threatened the galaxy since the dawn of time was about to begin." Elena opened the communication channel again, feeling the weight of species leadership settling on her shoulders. "All humans, listen carefully. You're about to remember skills and knowledge that have been sleeping in your genes for thousands of generations. Do not fight these memories. Embrace them. Our galaxy needs the return of its true guardians." Across human space, the awakening continued as millions of people discovered they were capable of far more than they had ever imagined. The transformation of human space was occurring at a pace that defied comprehension. On New Terra Colony, former archaeologist Dr. Sarah Chen found herself instinctively understanding the control systems of an ancient starship that had risen from beneath her research site. The vessel was larger than any current human ship, its hull composed of materials that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "I know how to pilot this," she said in wonder, her hands moving across control surfaces that had been designed by her ancestors, but felt as familiar as her own heartbeat. "The knowledge is just there, like I've been flying ships like this my entire life." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as humans discovered abilities they never knew they possessed. Miners on the asteroid belt found themselves able to manipulate gravitational fields with machines that emerged from hidden chambers. Farmers on agricultural worlds realized they could communicate directly with the ecosystem, guiding the growth of crops through methods that transcended normal biology. Elena watched the reports flooding in from her position aboard the Defense Fleet courier ship. "It's working," she told Captain Nakamura. "Every human settlement is reporting successful activation of ancient technologies. But we need to coordinate these efforts before the Devourers reach the core systems." The main Devourer fleet had paused its advance, apparently confused by the sudden surge of activity from what they had considered a minor species. Their scout ships were probing the edges of human space, testing the newly activated defenses with tendrils of dark energy. Admiral Vorn's holographic image appeared in the communication center, his expression a mixture of amazement and growing hope. "The energy signatures from your settlements are incredible," he reported. Our sensors are detecting weapons platforms with power outputs that exceed our most advanced battleships. If these systems are truly functional, we might actually have a chance. Elena felt the Guardian's knowledge stirring in her mind, providing tactical information about the ancient conflict with the Devourers. The weapons platforms are just the beginning, she explained. Our ancestors built a comprehensive defense network designed specifically to counter Devourer tactics. But it requires coordination between multiple human settlements to achieve maximum effectiveness. She closed her eyes and accessed the star charts embedded in her genetic memory. The positions of every hidden weapon, every dormant ship, every secret installation left behind by humanity's previous incarnation became clear in her mind. The scope of the ancient preparations was staggering. There, she said, pointing to a seemingly empty region of space between human colonies. That coordinate contains the command nexus for the entire defensive network, but it can only be activated by someone carrying the full genetic sequence of the original builders. Captain Nakamura checked the navigation charts. That's in the middle of nowhere. Our scanners show nothing but empty space. Elna smiled, feeling the ancient knowledge providing answers to every question. The station is there, just not in our dimensional layer. It exists in the same space-time coordinates as the Devourers, which is why normal sensors can't detect it. But a human with the proper genetic activation can cross between dimensions to reach it. The implications hit them both simultaneously. Elena would have to leave normal reality and enter the same dimensional space where the Devourers existed. She would be completely alone, surrounded by beings that could drain the life from entire planets. It's suicide, Nakamura protested. Even with ancient weapons, you can't fight an entire fleet by yourself. Elena felt a calm certainty settling over her as the genetic memories provided tactical assessments. I won't be fighting them directly. The command nexus controls a network of automated systems that can engage the Devourers across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. But someone has to be there to coordinate the attack, and the station systems will only respond to the genetic signature of humanity's original leaders. Reports continued to flood in from human settlements as more ancient technologies came online. Massive ships that dwarfed anything in the current galactic fleet were emerging from hidden bases throughout human space. Weapon systems that could tear holes in reality itself were powering up after millennia of dormancy. The true scope of humanity's ancient achievements was finally being revealed. But the Devourers were not passive observers of these developments. Their main fleet began to accelerate toward human space, apparently deciding that this resurgent threat needed to be eliminated quickly. Energy tendrils lashed out across interstellar distances, testing the defenses around human worlds and probing for weaknesses. The first clash came at the mining colony of Asteroid Base 7. A Devourer scout ship materialized near the installation, its presence immediately causing space-time distortions that threatened to tear the station apart. But the miners had successfully activated an ancient defense platform, and the resulting battle lit up the void with energies that existed in multiple dimensions. Elena watched the engagement through the defense fleet's long-range sensors, feeling pride and fear warring in her chest. The human defenders were holding their own, but barely. They were still learning to use their inherited weapons, still discovering the tactical knowledge buried in their genes. We need to reach the command nexus quickly, she told Nakamura. The individual defense platforms are powerful, but they're not designed to operate independently. Without central coordination, the Devourers will be able to defeat them one by one. The courier ship altered course toward the coordinates Elena had provided, racing against time as the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. Behind them, humanity continued its awakening to cosmic purpose, while ahead lay a confrontation that would determine whether the galaxy's true guardians could reclaim their ancient role. The space where the command nexus should have existed appeared completely empty to every sensor aboard the courier ship. Captain Nakamura ran scan after scan, finding nothing but the usual cosmic background radiation and distant starlight. But Elena could feel the station's presence like a weight against her consciousness. Existing just beyond the edge of normal reality. It's there, she insisted, studying the readings from the ancient knowledge flowing through her mind. The ancients built it in a dimensional pocket that overlaps our space but remains hidden from conventional detection. I need to use the dimensional shift protocol. Nakamura looked skeptical. Even if such technology exists, how do you know it won't kill you? Crossing between dimensional layers sounds incredibly dangerous. Elena accessed the genetic memories, finding detailed information about the process that her ancestors had used to travel between realities. There's risk, she admitted, but the Guardian prepared me for this. My genetic structure has been modified to survive dimensional transitions that would destroy most beings. She moved to the ship's central console and began inputting commands that came naturally to her enhanced consciousness. The ship's systems responded to her touches in ways that surprised both women, revealing hidden functions that had never appeared in any technical manual. Your ship has ancient technology integrated into its core systems, Elena explained as she worked. All human vessels do, though the knowledge of how to use it was lost until now. I'm activating the dimensional shift capabilities. The space around them began to shimmer and distort as the ship's hidden systems engaged. Reality became fluid, shifting between layers of existence that human science had never suspected. Elena felt her consciousness expanding, perceiving multiple dimensions simultaneously as the ancient modifications to her genetic structure took full effect. Through the dimensional barriers, she could see the Devourer fleet in all its terrible glory, hundreds of massive ships that existed partially in normal space and partially in the void between realities, their hulls crackling with energy, drawn from the destruction of countless civilizations. They moved through dimensions like predators stalking prey, leaving trails of consumed reality in their wake. But she could also see humanity's ancient defenses, hidden throughout the galaxy like sleeping giants waiting for activation, weapon platforms that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, ancient battleships that could phase between realities to strike at enemies from impossible angles, and at the center of it all, the command nexus that would coordinate the entire network. The station materialized around them as the dimensional shift completed. Elena found herself standing in a vast chamber filled with holographic displays and control systems that hummed with barely contained power. The architecture was unmistakably human, but reflected a level of technological advancement that current humanity had never achieved. "Welcome, Inheritor," spoke a voice that seemed to come from the station itself. "We have waited long for one worthy to claim the Guardian's legacy." Elena approached the central command throne, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. As she sat down, neural interfaces extended from the chair to make contact with her modified nervous system. Suddenly, her consciousness expanded to encompass the entire defensive network. She could see every human settlement, every ancient weapon, every dormant ship that had been left behind by her ancestors. The scope of the preparations was staggering. Humanity's previous incarnation had spent thousands of years building a comprehensive defense against the Devourer threat, creating redundant systems and hidden weapons that could be activated by their genetic descendants. Through the network, Elena could feel the awakening happening across human space. Miners, farmers, scientists, and colonists were discovering abilities that defied their understanding of physics. Ships that had been hidden for millennia were emerging from pocket dimensions. Weapons that could wound beings existing between realities were powering up after eons of dormancy. The Devourer fleet had detected the activation of the command nexus and was accelerating toward the hidden station. Elena could sense their approach through the dimensional barriers, a wave of hungry darkness that sought to consume everything in its path. "Attention all human settlements," Elena broadcast through the ancient communication network. "This is Elena Martinez speaking from the Guardian's command nexus. The Devourer fleet is approaching our positions. It's time to show these cosmic parasites why humanity was once feared throughout the galaxy." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every human who had successfully activated ancient technology reported their readiness for battle. Dr. Sarah Chen launched her dimensional battleship from New Terra Colony. The miners of Asteroid Base 7 brought online weapon platforms that could tear holes in space-time itself. Agricultural worlds revealed hidden shipyards that began launching vessels designed for combat across multiple realities. Elena felt the tactical knowledge of her ancestors flowing through her consciousness, providing strategies and battle plans that had been refined over countless engagements with dimensional predators. She began coordinating the human response, positioning ships and weapons for maximum effectiveness against enemies that existed partially outside normal reality. The first Devourer scouts reached the outer edges of human space, their dark tendrils probing for weaknesses in the ancient defenses. They found instead a network of weapons and warriors that had been specifically designed to counter their abilities. Energy beams that could track targets across dimensional boundaries, ships that could phase between realities to avoid devourer attacks, and most importantly, humans whose genetic modifications allowed them to perceive and fight enemies that existed in multiple dimensions. The battle for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, with humanity finally taking its place as the cosmos's true guardians. The galaxy had never witnessed a battle like the one that erupted across multiple dimensions of spacetime. Elena coordinated humanity's response from the command nexus. Her consciousness expanded to perceive combat occurring in realities that conventional physics could not explain. Through her neural link to the ancient network, she could feel every human defender as they engaged the Devourer fleet with weapons that had been waiting millennia for this moment. Dr. Sarah Chen piloted her dimensional battleship through space that folded and twisted around her, pursuing Devourer scouts that tried to escape by shifting between realities. Her ship responded to her thoughts as much as her control inputs, the ancient technology interfacing directly with her enhanced genetic structure to achieve maneuvers that defied normal understanding of physics. Target acquired, she reported, as her ship's weapons locked onto a Devourer vessel that was attempting to drain energy from a nearby star. Engaging with quantum disruption cannon. The weapon fired a beam of energy that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, striking the alien ship with force that caused its partially materialized hull to collapse back into normal space-time. The Devourer vessel exploded in a cascade of dimensional energy that rippled across multiple realities. Similar victories were being reported across the battlefield as humanity's awakened defenders proved that the ancient weapons could indeed harm beings that fed on dimensional energy. The miners of Asteroid Base 7 had successfully deployed gravity well generators that trapped Devourer ships in normal space, where conventional weapons could damage them. Agricultural worlds launched swarms of automated defenders that could track enemies across dimensional boundaries. But the main Devourer fleet was still approaching, and Elena could sense the vast hunger that drove them. These beings had consumed the energy of entire galactic clusters, growing stronger with each civilization they devoured. They viewed the resistance from humanity's ancient weapons as merely an interesting challenge, rather than a genuine threat. Elena accessed the deepest layers of her inherited knowledge, searching for the tactical information her ancestors had developed during their original conflict with the Devourers. The memories that surfaced were both inspiring and terrifying, showing battles fought across cosmic scales with weapons that could reshape reality itself. All human forces, implement Protocol 7, she commanded through the network. We're going to show these cosmic parasites exactly what they're dealing with. Protocol 7 was humanity's ultimate battle strategy, a coordinated assault that required every defender to act in perfect synchronization across multiple dimensional layers. Elena felt the consciousness of every human in the fleet merge with her own through the command nexus, creating a unified awareness that spanned thousands of individual minds. The effect was immediate and devastating. Human ships began moving in formations that seemed to defy the laws of physics, appearing and disappearing across vast distances as they phased between realities. Weapons fired in patterns that created cascading dimensional disruptions, trapping Devourer vessels in energy fields that prevented them from feeding on surrounding spacetime. Admiral Vorn watched the battle from his position with the Galactic Defense Fleet, his instruments barely able to track the combat occurring across multiple dimensions. Incredible, he breathed. The humans are fighting enemies we can't even properly detect, using weapons that shouldn't be possible. The noble house representatives who had scorned Elena at the Bloodline Hall were also observing the battle, their expressions reflecting a mixture of awe and growing understanding. The species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers was demonstrating military capabilities that exceeded anything in their recorded history. We were wrong, Archkeeper Vexathol admitted quietly. Everything we believed about galactic history was incorrect. Humanity truly was our teacher and protector. Elena felt the tide of battle shifting as the Devourer fleet realized they were facing opponents who understood their true nature. The alien ships began to retreat toward the galactic rim, but Elena was not content to simply drive them away. The ancient knowledge in her mind provided clear warnings about what would happen if these beings were allowed to escape and regroup. All forces, implement containment formation, she commanded. We cannot allow any Devourer ships to escape. If they return to their home dimension and bring reinforcements, the galaxy will face a threat that even our ancestors could not defeat. The human fleet moved to surround the retreating devourers, using dimensional phase technology to block every possible escape route. Ships that had been hidden throughout the galaxy for tens of thousands of years emerged from pocket dimensions, their ancient hulls gleaming with power that had been accumulating for millennia. The final phase of the battle was swift and decisive. Caught between multiple dimensional layers with no avenue for retreat, the Devourer fleet found itself trapped by weapons specifically designed to counter their abilities. One by one, the alien ships were destroyed by energy that dissolved their extra-dimensional existence and returned their stolen power to normal spacetime. When the last Devourer vessel was eliminated, Elena felt a profound silence settle over the galaxy. The threat that had loomed over civilization since the dawn of time had been permanently eliminated by humanity's return to its true nature. She opened communication channels to every species in the galaxy, feeling the weight of cosmic leadership settling permanently on her shoulders. "People of the galaxy," she announced, "the threat has been eliminated. Humanity has reclaimed its role as the guardian of all life among the stars. We offer our protection to any species that desires peace, and our friendship to those who share our vision of a galaxy united in common purpose." The responses that flooded back were overwhelming. Species after species acknowledged humanity's true heritage and requested alliance with the returned guardians. Even the noble houses, humbled by their recognition of historical truth, offered to serve under human leadership. Elena smiled as she felt the ancient network responding to the galaxy's acceptance of humanity's role. Throughout human space, more ships and weapons were emerging from their hiding places, revealing the full scope of the preparations their ancestors had made. The galaxy would be safe under humanity's protection, just as it had been in the ancient past. The true inheritor had finally claimed her birthright, and the cosmos was better for it.